Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. The problem of what to do about the euro, and again, there are a number of schools of thought. My own is nationalize, Europeanize the European Central Bank, make them submissive to legislation coming from a European Parliament. That would actually have to have real power, and that European Parliament would determine the size of the credit volume that's going to be put out in a given year. That European Parliament would determine the interest rates that were going to be used, and above all, the preferential order of what kinds of categories of economic activity should be financed, not financial services, but infrastructure and commodity production, tangible physical wealth, as we know. So that's my plan. Now, what various people have said, and we have heard a lot of sort of legal crank arguments about this, that the euro is illegal and all this other stuff, and that of course that may have some merit. On the other hand, you could also say, well, the U.S. Constitution is illegal because the original task of that group in Philadelphia, they were supposed to amend the Articles of Confederation and not junk it completely and come up with something new. So what they did was illegal. So therefore, the whole thing is illegal. So you can cancel 250 years of history or whatever it is. This is obviously crazy. So you got to be a great realist when you look at these things, and you can't be an ideologue. You want to be guided by some philosophical ideas, but not as an ideologue. So here we have, again, one of the five semi-official German economic institutes saying it's time for the Greeks to go back to the drachma. Now, the idea, of course, being once you have the drachma alone, they can radically devalue the drachma, and then they could pay their foreign debt. That's the goal of this. Well, that's not my goal. I would say forget about paying the foreign debt. Debt moratorium immediately. Debt freeze. You can't pay. Iceland can't pay. The little countries can't pay. The big countries can't pay. Japan, as we've just heard, is getting close to the point where they're going to have to do that too. Wipe it off. Have a jubilee. Freeze it. It's going to have to be negotiated over a long, long time. Interest rates are going to have to be reduced by legislative fiat, yes, indeed, because civilization has to go on, and the civilization is not a suicide pact, and the principle of epikeia, that is to say, of equity, has to emerge. The purpose of all of these governments is to allow human civilization to exist, not to make sure that debts are paid. The debts will have to yield to the needs of the Greek people in this case. So the critique, of course, is if you have the Greek drachma and they devalue it down into the cellar, and of course if they don't do it themselves, they will find international speculators targeting them, shorting them, to get them down. So they will go way, way down. They'll go down to almost nothing. What does that do for the standard of living of the Greek people? Well, since so much of what they consume is imported, it will mean the most ferocious, brutal, deadly austerity for the Greek people. Their standard of living will go down by 20, 30, 40%. The more technical critique coming from a banker of UniCredit says, look, you think that the Greeks are going to export more if the drachma is cheap, but they have very little export industry. Now, the answer to that would be, well, they have tourism, and that takes care of some of it. But you can't build a country on tourism and gambling and the rest of this stuff. This is absolutely crazy. The problem is that the Greeks have almost no export industry, and therefore the whole thing does not work. The other thing is that if you take the Greek government and put it back on the drachma, they will have to pay their debts, which are denominated in euros, in drachmas, which mean a terrible deflation. It means that their debts will become greater and greater and greater. So again, there is no way out except a new version of the Hoover moratorium of June 1931, but this time permanent, meaning a debt moratorium and debt freeze, an open-ended, unlimited freeze of all international financial debt, be it interest rates or principal payments, debt service, the whole business frozen. This reminds us also, people who come around telling you we need a gold-backed currency, I don't think you do, because if you borrowed what's on your credit card, you borrowed those dollars in paper, And if you have to pay those back in gold dollars, think about what that's going to mean. It's going to be a hell of a lot more that you're going to have to pay. That's the cross of gold that William Jennings Bryan was complaining about. Now, gold is a great thing for the individual as self-defense. That's perfectly clear. But the idea of switching the whole society onto gold and goldifying the dollar when most Americans, a lot of Americans have nothing but negative net worth and huge amounts of debt, household debt, mortgage debt, credit card debt, student loans, and all that. You want to make that into gold and then pay it back. Not good. Not good for anybody. Now, here's the other side of the coin is that's the drachma. The drachma would go down in the cellar. The Greek standard of living would be cut in half or cut by 80 or 90%, who knows. How about Germany, which has a functioning export industry, although you look around here in Hamburg, Hamburg is the main port, right? So if Germany's exports are conquering the world, Hamburg should be tremendously prosperous. And unfortunately, it's not quite that way. You see a whole lot of areas here in the various parts of the city which are essentially shut down. A lot of empty offices, empty shops, a lot of homeless people, really, much more homeless than you usually see in Germany over a 10 or 20-year sample. So I don't think Germany is exactly in the greatest of shape. But let's just look at what would happen. If you had the D-Mark back, what would happen to the D-Mark? Well, instead of having the currency go down, it would go up, 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 because they wouldn't have the drag of Southern Europe, I guess the speculators would say. So it means the D-Mark would go up, 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 up. What would happen to German exports in that situation? And Germany, once again, is a country that actually has exports, unlike the Greeks, unlike the U.S. to a large degree. Germany was the number one exporter in the world until just a little while ago, and they're still contending with China, right? They might be able to repass the Chinese if they did the right thing. They could probably do that. So the Germans would then find that their currency was pricing them out of the world market, and of course the deflation, right? We're looking at the debt of Germany. It's significant. The consumer debt, other kinds of debt for individuals. Those debts would all then be radically increased. So and then, of course, at the end of all this, you're still in a world economic depression. You haven't done anything about the 1.5 quadrillion of derivatives. You have not shut down the zombie banks. The German banks, Deutsche Bank, Dresdner Bank, these are zombie banks just like Citibank, just like J.P. Morgan Chase, just like Goldman Sachs. They're all basically in the same situation. A couple of other things on the German economic situation, since it is such a good barometer for the world. The big things going on here. There have been some strikes here by locomotive engineers on the railroads because they're demanding that the private railroads, of which there are a few, raise their rates to the same level as the Bundesbahn, as the German state railway. So there's still a labor movement here to some extent. The IG Metall has been demanding a solution for the question of part-time work and temporary work. What you've got in Germany is large proportions of all kinds of firms are switching from permanent people hired as permanent workers to part-time temps, and this is called wage dumping. Wage dumping in Germany. There was just a debate about this in the Bundestag this afternoon. So there's obviously a terrific downward pressure on people getting this part-time work. And you want to know there's a minimum wage for this. The minimum wage for people in part-time work is 7.8 euros, 7 euros 80 centimes per hour in the in the west part of Germany. It's about €1 less. So 7.80. That's about what, $10 or $11. $11 an hour is the minimum wage. Well, it's better, but you got to remember food prices are higher. This is not any singing tomorrow. So the German economy remains depressed with very high levels of unemployment, low wages, and a lot of people getting by under this Hartz IV under about 400 euros a month, which, do the math, it's about $500 a month. No good. So depression is here. We need to get out of the depression. And remember, the slogan of the week is Turn Wall Street, CIA, destabilization of the world into a destabilization of Wall Street and the CIA. Turn the Wall Street destabilization of the world into a destabilization of Wall Street and the CIA, and we'll see